a young ghost. I remember that day at the hotel. I remember Clayton's last story. I can see us all now, in the dining room. Our good friends, Sanderson, Evans, and Wish were there. We four arrived at the hotel that Saturday morning and met Clayton there. "I came last night," he said. "I wanted to be here early this morning." We played tennis, and we walked in the country. Later, we went back to the hotel and enjoyed a very good dinner. We felt warm and happy in the hotel dining room. Clayton sat next to the large open fire and smoked his cigarette. He liked telling stories and wanted to tell us one now. We did not always believe Clayton's stories, but they were usually interesting. Sometimes they were very funny, too. "You know," he said, after a short time, "I was the only person in the hotel last night." "Were there no waiters here?" asked Wish, "or waitresses?" "Yes, of course, they were here. But they sleep on the top floor of the hotel," said Clayton. "I was the only visitor." Then he said, quite quietly, "I caught a ghost." "Caught a ghost?" said Sanderson. "Where is it?" Evans was very excited. He stood up and shouted, "You caught a ghost, Clayton? I'd like to hear more. Tell us about it." "I will, in a minute," said Clayton. "But first, please close the door, Evans. We don't want anybody to hear us. This is a very old building, and some people don't like the idea of ghosts near them." Evans shut the door and sat down again. "He wasn't a very good ghost. I don't think he will come again," said Clayton. "And where is it?" asked Sanderson. He looked round the room. We all looked. "He isn't here now. He went away," said Clayton. "He wanted to go, and I helped him." "I'm sorry about that," said Sanderson. "I never met a ghost in my life." We all laughed, but Clayton didn't laugh with us. "I know you don't believe me," he said, "but this really was a ghost." Nobody spoke for a minute or two. It was very strange. The strangest thing in my life. Before that, I didn't believe in ghosts. But then, there was one in my room. He lit another cigarette. "Did you talk to him?" asked Wish. "Oh, yes. For about an hour." "So, he enjoyed a good conversation," I said with a smile. "He wanted to talk," said Clayton. "He had a problem." "Did he cry?" somebody asked. "Yes, he cried some of the time," said Clayton. He looked quite sad when he remembered his conversation with the ghost. "Ghosts have a difficult time," he said. "I didn't know that. It isn't easy for them, you know." We all waited. Nobody wanted Clayton to tell his story quickly. "We forget," Clayton continued. "People stay the same after they die. A good person will be a good ghost. A stupid person will be a stupid ghost. People don't change. This was the weak ghost of a very weak young man. Clayton looked into the fire. I first saw him outside my room. I could see through him. He was in front of the window, but I could see the window through his back. Were you afraid? I asked. No, I wasn't, said Clayton. He couldn't hurt me. He was very weak. I could see that. How did he look? Asked Wish. He had one hand on the wall and the other hand in front of his mouth. He was young and thin, with big ears. His clothes weren't good. They were cheap clothes. So, what happened next? I asked. I came up the stairs very quietly. I stopped at the top and looked at him. I wasn't afraid, but I was interested in him. How long were you there? Asked Evans. Not more than a minute. He turned and saw me. For a short time, I looked at him, and he looked at me. Then he remembered. He was a ghost. He put his arms up above his head and said a quiet, "Boo." "Boo? Don't be stupid," I said. "Who are you? Why are you here?" Clayton drank a little more of his wine. Nobody spoke. We always enjoyed Clayton's stories, and this was one of his best. We waited quietly, and then he started to speak again. He looked a little sad. "Boo," he said again. I wasn't afraid of him. I wanted him to know that. So I walked through his arm. "Are you staying in this hotel?" I asked him. He moved away a little and looked down at the floor. "No, I'm not staying here," he said. "I'm a ghost." Evans asked a question. "How did he sound, Clayton?" Clayton thought for a minute. He sounded weak. He was the ghost of a weak young man. He sounded unhappy, too. "Who do you want to see?" I asked him. "Me? Or one of the waiters, perhaps?" He didn't answer me, so I tried again. "What are you doing here?" I asked. He put his hands down and stopped making the boo noise. We stood for a minute. I looked at him, and he looked at the floor. "I'm haunting," he said. "You can't do that here," I said quietly. "The people won't like it." "But I'm a ghost," he said. "I have to haunt. All of us do." "This is a hotel," I said. "People often stay here with children. Think of the problems. Children are afraid of ghosts. Didn't you think of that?" "No, sir," he said sadly. "I didn't." Sanderson laughed. "Not a very intelligent ghost," he said. "You're right," said Clayton. I wanted to know more about this unhappy ghost, so I asked him some questions. "Did you live here? Did you die here?" I asked him. "No, sir," he said. "I came here because it's a very old hotel. It's a good place for haunting. No, it isn't. You're wrong, I said. Now, go away. Go, before the morning comes. He looked down at his feet. What are you waiting for? I asked. There's a problem, he said. I can't go back. I came here last night at midnight for some haunting. It was my first time. I went into the cupboards in some of the bedrooms and I waited. But nobody came. There was nobody here. I couldn't haunt anybody. I walked up and down the stairs, but I didn't see anybody there. Now I want to get back, and I can't. I can't remember how. This is very strange, I said to him. He looked at me very sadly, and I couldn't be angry with him. Then I heard somebody downstairs. I don't understand the problem. Come into my room and tell me more about it, I said to him. I wanted to hold his arm, but it wasn't possible. There was nothing in my hand. But we went to my room, and I closed the door. Here we are, I said to him. I sat down on a chair next to the window. Sit down, and tell me all about it. I think you have quite a difficult problem. And did he sit down? Asked Evans. Can ghosts sit? This ghost didn't sit down. He wanted to move round the room. But we talked for quite a long time. It was really very strange. There I was, in my nice, clean bedroom, and there was this ghost with me. He moved from the door to the window, then back again to the door. He moved all the time, and I could see through him. I could see the candles through him, and the pictures on the wall. It felt very strange. Story 3, Part 2. The Young Ghost. And then he went. He wasn't there. I turned back to the room, but there was nobody there. What did you talk about when the ghost was in your room? Asked Wish. Did he tell you about his life? Asked Sanderson. We wanted to know more about our friend's visitor. We started to believe Clayton too. It was only a story when he started, and Clayton told very good stories. But now it was more than that. We believed it. And when did he die? Evans asked. Only last month. He's a new ghost, and not very good at it. He doesn't understand much about haunting. How did he die? That, said Clayton, is the most interesting thing about him. He worked as an English teacher in a London boys' school. He lived in a small room in the school. Some of the boys also lived there. One night he heard a sound. I never slept well, he said. When I heard a small sound, my eyes always opened again. He took a candle and went downstairs to the school office. There was an old gas fire in the room. The fire wasn't lit, and there was gas in the room. His candle lit the gas. There was a very loud noise, and then a fire started. He died in the fire. That was a very bad end to his life, Wish said. And the schoolboys? What happened to them? I asked. They were all right. Somebody saw the fire and put it out. It didn't go up to the bedrooms, but it was too late for my ghost. Clayton lit another cigarette and looked into the fire in the hotel dining room. Who was this ghost when he lived? I asked. I don't know his name. He didn't tell me. But he wasn't important. He didn't have a very interesting life, said Clayton. He wasn't clever, rich, or funny. He had a boring life, and now he's a boring ghost. He really didn't enjoy his life. He told you this? Asked Wish. That's right. When he moved across my bedroom, he was smoke in the wind. He talked, and it was a thin sound. The sound of a thin, stupid, boring man. Did he have a family? A wife? Children, perhaps? Or friends? Asked Wish. He talked about his mother and father, and his schoolteacher. I don't think he had any good friends all his life. He had a girlfriend. He wanted to marry her. He talked about her, and she sounded quite boring too. But the fire ended everything for him, Clayton said. I asked him, and where are you now? He didn't really know the answer to that. He talked about a place for new ghosts. It was a strange world, very different from ours. Ghosts stay there for some time. So, there were other ghosts with him? I asked. Oh, yes, said Clayton. A lot of other young men. They were all a little stupid, and they often talked about haunting. It was a game to them. Most of them didn't haunt. They only talked about it. But our friend heard them. He wanted to try haunting. I remembered pictures of ghosts and haunting, he said. It looked easy. I wasn't very good at most things. Perhaps I could be good at this. So I came here. He was wrong about that. He wasn't very good at haunting. And how did he feel about that? I asked. He was very unhappy. He wanted to be a good ghost, but he wasn't. When he told me all of this, he looked very sad. I think I was his first friend. Nobody in my life was as kind to me as you are now, he said. I didn't want to be kind. I wanted him to leave my bedroom. I said, haunting isn't easy. You had some problems here, but don't think about that now. Go back now to the other world and forget about this haunting. I can't get back there, he said unhappily. I try, but I can't do it. Try again, I said to him. So he did. He tried, said Sanderson. How? With gestures, said Clayton. Hand gestures. He got here that way. He had to get back the same way. But how could he do that? I asked. Clayton walked across the room. We all followed him with our eyes. It's difficult, he said. There were a lot of different gestures. I can't tell you everything, but perhaps I can show you. He moved his hands and waved his arms. Clayton's arms flew round his head. He gestured this way and that way, He did it again and again. But each time he forgot something. It was very strange. We were there, in my bedroom. It was very quiet. There was no sound. The light from the candles moved a little. And there was my ghost, with his strange gestures. He tried for a minute or two. Then he sat on the little chair by the bed. "I can't do it," he said. "I shall never get back." And then he started to cry. I put my hand on his back. I wanted to be kind to him. But my hand went through him, and I pulled it away. "Now," I said to him, "try again. I'll try too. We'll do it at the same time." "What do you mean?" said Evans. "You tried the gestures?" "Yes. I wanted to help him." "This is very interesting," said Sanderson. "He showed you the gestures? The way back to the other world?" "Yes." "But he went, and you didn't." For a short time, nobody spoke. It was very quiet in the room. "And then he did it? He went?" I asked. "Yes, he did it," Clayton said. "He tried and tried. I tried with him. We went back to the start and tried again. I made the gestures slowly, and he watched carefully. Then he said, 'Don't watch me. I'll do it better that way.' So I turned my back to him. I looked at the window, and he stood behind me. He made the gestures. I could see him in the window. For the last gesture, he put his arms out, like this." Clayton stood and showed us the last gesture. And then he went. He wasn't there. I turned back to the room, but my ghost wasn't there. I was the only person in the bedroom. And that's the end of his story. "So then you went to bed?" asked Evans. "Yes, I did." "Tell us more about these gestures," said Sanderson. "I think I can do them all now," Clayton said. "They won't work," said Evans. "Nothing will happen." "Perhaps they will work," I said, "and then—" "I don't think this is a good idea," said Wish. He looked afraid. "He won't get the gestures right," said Sanderson, "so it will be all right." Clayton stood in front of the fire. "I've got a problem with one gesture," he said. "I can't get it quite right. Look." He showed us the gesture. At the end, it didn't look right. We could see that. "Try it this way," said Sanderson, and he moved his hands in a different way. Clayton tried again. It looked better. "Now I can do everything," said Clayton. "Watch. This is the start." "Stop," said Wish. "Don't do this. I think it's dangerous." "Why?" asked Evans. "Nothing will happen. Clayton won't go into the world of ghosts. He's a person. He's a big, strong man, not a thin little ghost. Look at him." "Wish is afraid," I said. Wish stood up. "Clayton," he said, "you're stupid. This is a stupid game. Stop it, now." But Clayton smiled at him. He didn't want to stop. "Perhaps Wish is right, and you are all wrong," he said. Perhaps I will go. Let's try. Let's see. He started doing the gestures. We all watched him. Nobody said a word. He came to the last gesture. Nobody moved. He stood for a minute with his arms open. The light from the candles shone on his face. We all watched and waited. Nothing happened. And then Clayton's face changed. There was a sudden change in his eyes. His smile went. He stood there, and then, very slowly, he started to fall. We all moved quickly to him. Evans was there first, and Clayton fell into his arms. For a short time, nobody spoke. Clayton was on the floor. Sanderson felt inside his shirt, but there was no life. We could do nothing for him. And now, Clayton is in the ghost world. I was afraid of this, Wish cried. Why did this happen? We asked. There was no answer. Perhaps it was because of the gestures and the ghost. But we will all have to die. Perhaps this was Clayton's time, and the gestures were not important. I don't know. But I do know this. Clayton finished the gestures, and in the very next minute, he fell down, dead.